Hey, everybody. So we just recently talked about the Declaration of Independence, and I often describe it as it's a breakup letter with the Crown, with England, but it's also a mission statement for what they hope is the society to come. And so we can set aside for a moment the hypocrisy that was obvious at the time they wrote this. The relationship between men and women, the political freedoms and the economic freedoms of women were very limited by comparison. And of course, slavery existed, and their views on both the African slaves and the natives, right, and tribes and all that. Okay, hypocrisy, fine. So they're setting up this mission statement though for this future where, right, they make the statements that we focused on, right, in week 3. So I bring all this up because I want to have a little bit of a deeper discussion about rights and whether or not they are real. So our founders used a couple rhetorical tactics at the very outset of what we read last week. We hold these truths to be self-evident. They are derivable through reason and logic. That all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. There's a lot of work being done in these short amount of words. So if you go back and you look at John Locke and previous authors and writers, and even theologians, they'll talk about the natural law, the moral law. King mentioned this in his letter from Birmingham jail, right? So that's natural law that he references there. And John Locke, he uses the concept of natural law to make the argument for inalienable rights, rights that are inextricably attached to us and cannot be removed or given away. And why did they do this? Why did they use these particular techniques? Well, let's start with self-evident truths. Initially, they wanted to use some type of language like sacred truths or sacred values, which certainly got the point across, but they didn't have the concrete punch that Ben Franklin's recommendation ended up having, which is self-evident truths, obvious, discernible through reason and logic and experience. Okay, so this is a very secular, rational approach, right? You don't need any outside authority or power to make these claims. They're self-evident. It's a great line, does a lot of good work. Self-evident truths. Okay, that all men are created equal, right? This line talks about fundamental human equality, intrinsic value, intrinsic equality, right? There is no such thing as a better or an inferior or superior, inferior. There's no nobles, right, and peasants no more anymore. They're just, we are all people together now. And you are judged by the content of your character, right? But not the status that you are born into. That they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. The founders did a lot of work to keep the concept of religion and God out of the Declaration and the founding documents more broadly, because they didn't want the baggage of religion to be brought in. Nature's God, right? In the previous paragraph in the Declaration, they mentioned nature's God, but it's very ambiguous. When we talk about inalienable rights being, right, given or coming from a creator, what they were saying is, what they were realizing is that without that external anchor point, we are just dealing with your preference versus my preference, right? So if we take away endowed by their creator, what they're saying is, we think that humans ought to have access to their life, their liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? It's better that people have free speech, the ability to defend themselves with a weapon, like a firearm. It's better that people are protected from arbitrary exercise of power from government. Consider the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments, right? These are all better preferences. And preferences, right, are just that. They're just preferences. They're trying to make a much more concrete and objective claim about rights that isn't exactly true or real. It's a very persuasive argument. I like how they did it, and I support everything that came after it. But are rights real? Are rights objectively real? Are do natural rights really exist? There's a debate on that one. And I find it to be a fascinating debate, which is why I'm bringing this to your attention. You see, if our founders didn't anchor our natural, our inalienable rights in an authority outside of us, if they don't do that, then where is the other place where your rights come from? If it's not from an outside authority, higher power, God, whatever, then it comes from down here in the material realm. And if it comes from the material realm in the form of a government, right, that means that government makes your rights. Government is the arbiter of your rights. They wanted to tell a different story where the government was not the arbiter of our rights. The governments existed after our rights. That's very important. Because if the government exists and then gives us our rights, then the government can take them away on a whim. The government can take them away because cultural values have shifted, circumstances have changed, whatever. Our founders knew this was going to be a substantial problem. And so in order to create rights that were anchored as much as possible, they had to go to an external source of authority, God, whatever. So you need to be aware of this. Why? Why do you need to be aware of this? Because when we talk about rights, we need to understand that rights without an enforcement mechanism are just, it's rhetoric, it's idea, it's nothing. There's nothing there, right? I can go somewhere in the world where they don't have all the protections that we have in this country, and I can start expounding upon my rights, and I get laughed at, maybe thrown in jail, depending on, right, what trouble I'm causing, because my natural rights don't follow me everywhere around the world. My natural rights work here under a government that is designed to protect them, because we operate on the assumption that they come from outside of us and beyond the reach of the government. But if you live in a society that doesn't think that, then you don't have rights in that way. You can say, well, they exist anyway, they're just not being protected. Sure, tell whatever story you want. So this is no small concern, and I'm certainly not the first person. This is a widely held discussion within the philosophical, religious, and academic communities. And now it's one that you are somewhat familiar with as well. Talk soon.